I'm Isabel, and I never thought a single phone call could turn my world upside down. One crisp morning, as I stood on the rocky shore of Bar Harbor, Maine, watching the Atlantic lap against the docks, my phone buzzed with a call I'd come to dread. My mother-in-law, Evelyn, was on the line. Her voice sharp with a smugness that made my stomach twist. "They're all gone now, Isabel," she said, words dripping with satisfaction, like she had just won a prize. "I sold every last one of your father's boats to my friends at the yacht club. Got fantastic deals, too. You should be thanking me for cleaning up that mess while you're off playing scientist." I gripped my thermos of coffee, the warmth doing little to ease the chill creeping up my spine. The boats she was talking about weren't just boats. They were my father's legacy. 7 research vessels he'd poured his heart into, each one fitted with custom equipment for studying Maine's marine ecosystems. I'd grown up on those boats, trailing him through summers as he taught me to love the ocean, to see it as a living, breathing world worth protecting. He was a marine biologist, a quiet genius who'd spent his life mapping lobster habitats and coral beds. And when he passed, he left those boats to me, trusting I'd carry on his work. I was in Maine for a research fellowship studying sustainable lobster fishing to help local communities. The boats were docked just a few miles away, safe, or so I thought. Evelyn's words hit like a rogue wave. "You sold them?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. "All 7. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she laughed, the sound grating through the phone. "They were just rotting at the marina, collecting barnacles. I did you a favor. My friends will actually use them. Cruises, parties, proper things. Besides, the money's already sorted. Cash deals, no fuss." I stared out at the misty horizon, my mind racing. Cash deals, no paperwork. My father had been meticulous. Every boat was registered in my name, locked down with security measures he had installed himself. Evelyn didn't know that. She thought she could waltz in and sell what wasn't hers. "Did you handle the titles?" I asked, forcing calm. "The transfer documents." She hesitated just for a second. "Oh, paperwork's such a hassle," she said, brushing it off. "Cash is cleaner. Your father was always fussing over permits and nonsense. Waste of time if you ask me." I forced a smile she couldn't see. "Thanks for letting me know, Evelyn. I've got a research meeting soon, so I'll catch up with you later." "That's it," she said, her tone sharp with disappointment. "You're not upset. Those boats were worth millions, and now they're gone. Just like that." "Just like that," I echoed, ending the call before she could gloat further. My hands shook as I set the phone down, anger and disbelief swirling in my chest. Those boats weren't status symbols to be flaunted at her yacht club. They were tools for science, for protecting the ocean my father loved. Each one had a purpose. One mapped ocean currents. Another monitored lobster populations. Another housed sonar for reef studies. Evelyn saw dollar signs. I saw my father's dreams. I took a deep breath, the salty air grounding me. My father had always warned me about Evelyn. "She'll try to take what's yours," he'd said one summer. His voice low as we scrubbed barnacles off the hull of his favorite vessel, the Sea Sentinel. "She thinks money is power. Promise me you'll protect the boats, Isabel. They're for the ocean, not her." I'd promised, and I meant it. Now, Evelyn thought she'd outsmarted me, but she had no idea what she was up against. I dialed another number, one I knew by heart. "Harbor Master, it's Isabel," I said when Emma's familiar voice answered. "Has anyone tried to move my father's boats?" "Isabel, I was just about to call you," Emma said, her Maine accent thick with concern. "Some folks showed up at dawn, waving cash and claiming they bought the boats. I told them they need proper titles and registration. They weren't thrilled, but those boats ain't going anywhere without your say-so." Relief washed over me, though my pulse still raced. "And the security system? It's all active. Tight as a clam," Emma said. "Your father set it up, electronic locks, codes, the works. Nobody's moving those vessels without your authorization. Should I be worried?" "Not yet," I said, a plan forming. but keep the cameras rolling. I think they'll try again. I hung up and opened my laptop, pulling up the marina's security feed. 7 live streams flickered to life, each showing one of my father's boats bobbing gently in their slips. The Sea Sentinel, Tide Chaser, all of them safe for now. My father had been a step ahead, always. He'd known Evelyn's greed would surface someday, and he built a fortress around his legacy. I felt a surge of pride mixed with a sting of betrayal. Evelyn thought she could erase my father's work with a few phone calls and a wad of cash. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. Back in my small rental cottage in Bar Harbor, I sat at the kitchen table, the security feed still open on my laptop. The boats gleamed under the marina's floodlights, untouched. But my mind churned with what I'd just learned. Evelyn hadn't just sold my father's boats. She'd spun a web of lies, and I needed to untangle it before she caused more damage. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I replayed her call in my head, her smug tone echoing like a taunt. She thought she'd won, but I wasn't the naive scientist she took me for. I pulled up the marina's archived footage, my father's foresight guiding me once again. Every boat was rigged with cameras, discreet, high-def, motion-activated. I clicked on the Sea Sentinel's feed from earlier that day. There she was, Evelyn striding onto the dock in her tailored blazer, her friend Ava trailing behind. They approached the boat, Evelyn gesturing confidently like she owned the place. Ava handed her a crowbar, and Evelyn tried to pry open the cabin door, her face twisting in frustration when it wouldn't budge. I froze the frame, my jaw tightening. She wasn't just selling stolen property. She was trying to break in. My phone buzzed with a text from my husband, John. Mom just called. Furious. Says you've got some fancy security on the boats. Why didn't you tell me? His words stung, not because of what he said but because of what they meant. Evelyn had gotten to him, too. John was a good man, steady in his own way, but he'd always struggled to see through his mother's charm. Growing up, she'd dangled promises of wealth to keep him close, and now she was using those same tactics to drive a wedge between us. I typed back, my fingers steady despite the anger simmering inside. Because she's been trying to sell the boat since Dad died. The security was his idea, not mine. Check your email. I sent you the footage. I attached the clip of Evelyn and Ava along with a screenshot of the boat's registration. All in my name. John deserved to know the truth, even if it hurt. Minutes later my phone rang. Isabel, is that my mom trying to break into the Sea Sentinel? John's voice was shaky, like he was seeing her for the first time. And Ava's with her, trying to mess with the Tide Chaser's engine. Yes, I said, keeping my tone gentle. She told you I agreed to sell them, didn't she? There are no papers, John. She lied. She sold boats she had no right to sell and took money she had no right to take. There was a long pause, the kind that carries years of unspoken truths. She said you signed off on it, he admitted. Told me the money would help us, help me start my own firm. I believed her. My heart ached for him. John wasn't like his mother. He worked long hours crunching numbers, dreaming of independence, but never quite breaking free of her influence. It's not your fault, I said softly. But we need to stop this before it goes further. The boats are safe for now, thanks to Dad's security, but her friends think they own them. They paid cash for stolen property. What are you going to do? He asked. His voice quieter now, like he was bracing for the answer. Nothing rash, I said. The boats can't be moved without my codes. And I've got the footage. I'm sending it to Dad's lawyer. Evelyn's friends might want their money back when they realize what she's done. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from Evelyn. I played it, her voice sharp and accusing. Isabel, how dare you lock me out of those boats? My friends paid good money, and now you're making me look like a fool. You'll regret this. I promise you. I saved the message. Another piece of evidence. She thought she could bully me, but every word she spoke was digging her deeper. I called Harbor Master Emma again. Any updates? I asked, glancing at the live feed. The boats were still there, serene against the darkening sky. Evelyn's friends came back an hour ago, Emma said, her voice dry. One of them, Ava, was waving a lot of cash, demanding I hand over the keys. I told her to take it up with you. They left in a huff, but I've got the cameras on 24/7, just like you asked. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Growing up, I'd idolized my father's quiet strength, the way he faced storms, literal and figurative, without flinching. He taught me to do the same, to think 3 steps ahead. Evelyn thought she was dealing with a distracted academic, too buried in data to notice her scheming. But I'd learned from the best. I opened my email and began drafting a message to my father's lawyer, attaching the security footage and Evelyn's voicemail. Here's the evidence, I wrote. Let's make sure she faces the consequences. The ocean outside my window whispered against the shore, steady and unyielding. I felt my father's presence in that sound, in the boats that carried his dreams. Evelyn had underestimated us both, and I was ready to show her what happened when you tried to steal a legacy. The next morning, my phone was a battlefield of notifications. Texts, voicemails, emails, all from Evelyn's yacht club friends. They were panicking, their messages a mix of anger and desperation, demanding their money back for boats they thought they'd bought. I forwarded each one to my father's lawyer, building a case as solid as the granite cliffs of Acadia. I was preparing for a research dive, checking my gear, when Harbor Master Emma called. Isabel, you need to see this. Your mother-in-law is at the marina with the police. I switched to the live security feed on my laptop, my pulse quickening. There was Evelyn, her designer scarf fluttering as she waved her arms at the boats, 2 officers standing beside her. Her face was flushed, her voice carrying through the feed's audio. Those boats belong to my friends, she shouted. They paid for them and she's stealing them. I clenched my jaw as one officer, a grizzled man with a tired expression, shook his head. Ma'am, we've checked the records. These vessels are registered to Isabel. There's no evidence of a legal sale. But I have witnesses. Evelyn snapped, pointing at the Sea Sentinel. They paid cash, good faith purchases. The officer's voice was firm, cutting through her bluster. Cash for property that wasn't yours to sell makes this attempted fraud. Your friends might want to explain why they thought they could buy boats without titles. Evelyn's face drained of color, her scarf slipping as she faltered. I couldn't help but feel a spark of satisfaction. She'd built her world on appearances, but now it was crumbling under the weight of her own lies. My phone buzzed with a text from John. Mom's crying. Says you're having her arrested. What's going on? I sighed, fingers hovering over the keyboard. John was caught in the middle, and I hated that for him. I'm not having her arrested, I typed. She tried to sell stolen boats and got caught. The police are just explaining what she did. His reply came after a long pause. She said she was helping, but the boats were wasting away. I found cash at her house. $60,000. She said it was for my firm to surprise me. My heart sank. Evelyn knew exactly how to pull John's strings, dangling his dream of starting his own accounting firm like bait. Those boats are Dad's life's work, I wrote back. She sold them for a fraction of their value. No papers, no rights. That's not helping. That's theft. I switched back to the security feed. Evelyn was still arguing, but the officers were unmoved. If there's no documentation, ma'am, these boats stay put, the second officer said. And the security footage, your attempts to access them, could mean more charges. Fraud. Attempted theft. You sure you want to keep pushing this? Evelyn's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, she looked small, her confidence unraveling like a frayed rope. I saved the footage. Another nail in the coffin of her scheme. My father had always said the truth was stronger than any lie, and he'd made sure I had the tools to prove it. Cameras, registrations, even the recorded call from yesterday. Another text from John appeared. I'm sorry, Isabel. I should have seen what she was doing. I didn't know. I closed my eyes, counting to 10. He wasn't the enemy here. Just a man caught in his mother's web. It's okay, I replied. We'll figure this out together. The boats are safe, and that's what matters. Emma's voice came through the phone again. She's leaving, Isabel. Stormed off muttering about lawyers. Want me to send the footage of her little tantrum? No need, I said, watching Evelyn's retreating figure on the feed. Her heels clicking furiously on the dock. I've got everything I need. I leaned back, the weight of the morning settling over me. Evelyn had thought she could outmaneuver me, paint me as the villain who tricked her friends. But the truth was clear, and it was on my side. Her friends were already turning on her, their voicemails flooding my inbox with demands for refunds and threats of lawsuits. The yacht club's gossip mill would be merciless, and Evelyn's carefully curated status was about to take a fatal hit. I felt a pang of pity for her, but it was fleeting. She'd chosen this path, and now she faced the consequences. I looked out at the ocean, its waves steady and unyielding. My father had taught me to fight for what mattered, to protect the things that couldn't protect themselves. The lobsters we studied, the reefs we mapped, the legacy he'd left me. Evelyn had seen only dollar signs. But I saw something bigger. This wasn't just about boats. It was about honoring a promise, about keeping my father's work alive. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not even family, take that away. Weeks passed before John and I spoke face to face again. When he finally showed up at my house, he looked 10 years older. His eyes hollowed by sleepless nights and the weight of truths he couldn't ignore. I should have stopped her, he said quietly, sinking into the chair across from me. Instead, I let her drag me down with her. I set a cup of tea in front of him, the steam curling between us like a fragile bridge. She's your mother, John. Loving her doesn't make you blind. It makes you human. His hands shook as he rubbed his temples. They're suing her, Isabel. The yacht club, her so-called friends. And the police, fraud, attempted theft. I don't even know where to start. I reached across the table, placing my hand over his. You start by not letting her mistakes define you. You have your own life to build. For the first time in weeks, his shoulders eased. His gaze softened, almost pleading. And you're not done with me. I shook my head. You're not her, John. You never were. A long silence stretched between us, but it wasn't the brittle silence of old resentments. It was the quiet of something healing, slowly knitting itself back together. That night, alone in my room, I opened my father's journal again. Its pages smelled faintly of salt and weathered leather, like the deck of the Sea Sentinel. His handwriting was steady, measured, each word a reminder of the man who had taught me to see the ocean not as property, but as a living, breathing partner. Legacy is not what we keep for ourselves, he had written in one entry, but what we leave anchored for others to find. I traced the sentence with my fingertip, a promise settling deeper into me. The next morning I suited up for a dive. The water was cold against my skin as I slipped beneath the surface, the world above dissolving into silence. Schools of silver fish darted around me, reefs alive with color and movement. I felt him there, in the pulse of the current, in the vastness that stretched beyond sight. For the first time in months, I wasn't weighed down by anger or fear. I was free, suspended in the very place he had loved most. When I surfaced, the horizon stretched wide and endless. The boats rocked gently at anchor, safe, waiting. Weeks later, the university called. My grant proposal, the one I had worked on through sleepless nights and raw determination, had been approved. The research station would expand, our work reaching further than my father ever dreamed. I stood on the dock that evening, the journal pressed to my chest, the ocean whispering steady and unyielding at my feet. Evelyn's schemes had crumbled, John and I had begun stitching together what was left, and the legacy my father entrusted to me was no longer just memory. It was alive, growing, carrying forward into the tide of tomorrow. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the water in gold, I knew this was only the beginning.